Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy, this is Red Means Recording, and today we're looking at the Leaf Audio Microphonic Soundbox. This is an acoustic wooden experimental instrument. It comes prepared with metal springs, metal rods, sandpaper, and a kalimba made from carbon strips. It can be played by scratching, bowing, whatever you can dream up. It has a battery inside which powers two contact mics, which is sent out via two line level preamps. On its own, it's compelling, but when you start adding effects, this thing becomes otherworldly. Here we're using simple overdrive, reverb, and echo. When I first heard this at Superbooth 2024, the creator had it set up with some reverb and delay, and I was smitten, which is why I got one. In this video, I want to walk you through some experimental patches I've created using the Leaf Audio Microphonic Soundbox. But first, let's run it through just a few more effects so you can get a sense of how transformative and weird this thing can be. Starting with Arturia's EFX fragments. Feels like you're inside the box. Every touch has a huge effect once you load interesting effects onto this thing, including resonators. A resonator takes the incoming sound and resonates it with a series of pitches that you can choose. I'm running this through fragments as well. So you can hear now, we have a chord. We'll use this more later. All right, now that you know what this thing sounds like without and with some effects, let's get into the first experiment, multiband split. In this patch, I'm using Ableton to split the incoming line level signal from the Leaf Audio Microphonic Soundbox into 5 different ways of processing. Each one of these has a series of resonators or other effects which create a massive apocalyptic soundscape from simple inputs. Oh boy, is it fun to play with. Let's go ahead and break this down. The first input is EQ to let only the lows through. That goes into an envelope follower, which goes into the spectral resonator from Ableton. This is essentially creating a kick drum drum because the envelope of the envelope follower is shifting the pitch of this like a kick drum would very quickly up and then down. You hear a little bit of echo on there to give it a bit of a heartbeat. The second low split is going into another spectral resonator. This one is resonating on the note G. I had the kalimba of the Microphonics Soundbox tuned to G. So this is like a low drone with a little bit of LFO on some of the effects of the spectral resonator and a little bit on the pitch to give it a sort of disturbing, warbly vibe. The next split is the mid-range, and this is pretty simple. It's mostly just pitch hacked up a little bit and grain delayed to give it a little bit of sparkliness, followed by a couple experimental convolution reverbs. This is the first high split, and this is panned left and right with an auto pan, and then run through a filter delay, and then the pitch hack effect. This is going to give us a glittery, drippy texture on top. And then finally we have this mid-high split. This is going into the shifter effect from Ableton. Oh, that's so cool. Which is giving it sort of a ring-modulated death sound, followed by a couple reverbs. I love that. So now that you know what each individual component is, let's bring them all back together. Our throb, our low resonation, our mid-range grain delay, our first high split with the pitch hack sort of drippiness, and then our top apocalyptic drone. All of this being triggered from a box that simply wants you to tap and strike and pet it. It's really cool. Absolutely just so much fun to play with. I love it. Okay, experiment number 2. Can this dance music? So I have a session set up here, which a bunch of different channels I'm going to record into. Each channel has this special Max for Live device called Auto Quantize. It's from abletondrummer.com, and it's going to quantize the audio in session view after a clip is done recording and then is triggered to play. Each one of these channels has something special going on, like a beat repeat or a resonator, or in this case, some redux. And I'm going to build up with the Microphonic Soundbox a series of clips that will eventually become a more rhythmic, sort of dance-oriented track. I don't have to worry super much about playing in time because the quantization of the audio will take care of that. Erosion, by the way, makes everything sound like hi-hats, which is really cool. Here's the resonator we looked at earlier with some overdrive and an auto filter. For the bass channel I'm about to play, I I have a MIDI clip that is MIDI sequencing the pitch of the spectral resonator. So I can play in a note that will sound like a bass, and then I can use MIDI to sequence its pitch. I'm also using an envelope follower on the input to envelope follow the filter frequency to get more of a synth-based sound. There you can see my bass clip and my bass MIDI clips next to each other. One's audio and one is MIDI. Let's bring in the drums. And there's a new sequence of the bass with new MIDI. Next up, I'm gonna bring in a channel of overdrive and reverb and try to give this a bit more like big space feel. So, with a little help of quantization from that Max for Live script and some smart effect chains, we can indeed make dance music. Isn't that cool? Oh, you're asking, but Jeremy, what about modular? Could you use this with modular? You're so ahead of the curve. Here's experiment 3. It's a modular patch, okay? Let's get into it. This patch takes incoming audio from the Soundbox, uses a multiband split to split it off into 2 envelope followers. These envelope followers have a gate out, which is fed to a sequencer to change the pitch of an oscillator. It also triggers the oscillator, which in this case is 2 instances of plates. The 2 plates oscillators are sent through a VCA, and each one has a slow LFO, which brings them in and out as time progresses. If I hit start on the clock here, you're going to hear a little rhythm I cooked up. This is a 16th note clock being sent to a Bernoulli gate, which randomly chooses whether or not to send out a trigger based on a coin flip. That's also going into plates, and it's in a drum mode, and we get this sort of a low, little throbby rhythm. There's also an input that is set to just go through an instance of Supercell, which is a Clouds clone. So I'm getting a little bit of the acoustic sound, plus oscillators, plus the little sequenced rhythm. Every time the envelope follower registers a gate, it makes the sequencer go forward, picks a new pitch, and a new modulation for rings, and we get to hear our oscillators. So to reiterate, we have envelope followers pushing sequencers forward and triggering plates. Every single time the envelope follower registers something from the Microphonic Soundbox, the sequencer moves forward, we get a triggered oscillator and a new pitch. But Jeremy, you say that's really beautiful, but what about pedals? Do you run it through any pedals? You Philistine, did you? Yes, I did. Here is an experiment where I just ran it through the hologram chroma console and microcosm, two of my favorite pedals for just fucking around and seeing what happens. I was not incredibly impressed with this experiment. It sounds okay, but I think really being able to split things into multiband and experimenting with resonators and stuff is the way to go with this device. That said, the phaser on the chroma console sounded really good on this. I also experimented with some of the more rhythmic modes on the microcosm, and it was okay. Again, I think I'd rather do this within the context of a DAW. So while not as mind-blowing as some of the other things I did with the device, it was fun to run it through some pedals. And that leads us to our final little piece and my conclusion on this box. I redid our multiband patch from the beginning of this video into something more major and more beautiful, and I'm accompanying it with the Polybrute 12. So the neat thing about this box is that it takes physical input and all of the complexities of physical space and physical interaction, resonation and all that, and turns it into something that can be used as fodder for sonic experiments. Because resonating frequencies and bowing and the way that you tap something all have very specific and complex physical waveforms, you can use these to create really, really complex and interesting interactions with effects and patches and all kinds of things. I've been jokingly calling this thing my bullshit box, and I have it in my bullshit corner, but honestly, this has awakened a whole new interest in me in ways to interact with sound, with physical resonating devices. So if you have anything that you'd like to suggest to me that's like this, please leave a comment. I would love to get my hands on more things like this and see what other weird stuff I can cook up. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording. There's one more thing I want to show you. And that is... Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.